The Israel-Hamas conflict that erupted on October 7, 2023, was one of the deadliest and most sudden escalations in the long history of Israeli-Palestinian tensions. This conflict shocked the world because of its scale, the tactics employed, and the devastating toll on civilians and combatants alike. It began early that Sunday morning when Hamas militants launched an unprecedented surprise attack on Israel. Hamas had secretly prepared for months, smuggling thousands of rockets into Gaza, building an extensive underground tunnel network, and training fighters in a range of tactics including paragliding, motorcycle raids, and coordinated explosives. On October 7th, over 5,000 rockets were fired from Gaza into southern and central Israel. These rockets came from hundreds of launch sites scattered throughout Gaza, overwhelming Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system, which, while advanced, could not stop every rocket. Simultaneously, Hamas fighters launched a ground assault by breaching Israel's fortified border fence. They used explosives, bulldozers, and innovative tactics like paragliders to infiltrate Israeli towns and kibbutzim near Gaza. The attacks were swift and brutal, catching Israel's defenses off guard. Hundreds of Israelis were killed or wounded in the initial hours, including civilians and soldiers. Additionally, Hamas took more than 250 hostages, civilians and soldiers alike, and moved them into Gaza. These hostages became a crucial bargaining chip and a complicating factor in Israel's response. The hostage-taking was deeply traumatic for Israel and intensified public demand for a forceful military response. Hamas used videos of the captives to push for the release of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails. This created immense pressure on the Israeli government to act decisively yet carefully to avoid the execution of hostages. Israel quickly launched Operation Iron Swords, a major military campaign aimed at destroying Hamas's military capabilities and recovering the hostages. The first phase focused on intense airstrikes targeting Hamas's rocket launchers, weapons factories, command centers, and the intricate tunnel system beneath Gaza, known as the Gaza Metro. These tunnels had been built over many years to facilitate the movement of fighters and weapons without detection, allowing Hamas to launch surprise attacks and evade Israeli surveillance. The Israeli Air Force employed a fleet of advanced fighter jets, including F-15S and F-35 stealth fighters, armed with precision-guided munitions such as JDAMs and laser-guided bombs to minimize civilian casualties. Drones played a critical role in reconnaissance and targeted strikes, giving Israel a technological edge. Despite efforts to reduce civilian harm, the dense urban environment and Hamas's tactics of embedding within civilian areas made it difficult to avoid collateral damage. One of the most significant strategic moves by Israel was targeting Hamas's leadership. Mohammed Deif, the shadowy and highly elusive commander of the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, had survived multiple assassination attempts over the years and was considered the architect of many Hamas operations. He was believed to be hiding in a heavily fortified location in Gaza. However, on October 19, 2023, Israeli intelligence pinpointed his location, and an airstrike was launched. Mohammed Deif was reportedly killed in this strike, a major blow to Hamas's command structure and morale. Shortly after, Khalil al-Hayya, a senior Hamas leader and close confidant of Deif, who played a significant role in both political and military coordination for Hamas, was killed on November 5, 2023, during targeted Israeli airstrikes. His death further disrupted Hamas's ability to organize and sustain its campaign. Despite these losses, Hamas demonstrated resilience. The group quickly appointed successors and continued fighting with renewed determination. Other senior commanders were killed in subsequent months. Riyad al-Attar, known for his role in orchestrating cross-border attacks against Israel, was killed on January 17, 2024. Then on March 12, 2024, Taysir al-Jabari, another key military figure responsible for overseeing rocket fire into Israeli territory, was killed in an Israeli airstrike. As Israel intensified its campaign, the humanitarian situation in Gaza worsened dramatically. The bombardment and ground operations destroyed homes, hospitals, schools, and infrastructure. Gaza's health system, already fragile due to the blockade and prior conflicts, was overwhelmed with casualties. Shortages of fuel, clean water and medical supplies created dire conditions. The United Nations and global humanitarian organizations warned of a worsening catastrophe as civilian casualties mounted and millions faced starvation and disease. Israel's military campaign included a ground invasion starting October 27, 2023, with troops entering Gaza to target Hamas fighters directly. Urban combat was brutal and costly. Hamas fighters used guerrilla tactics including snipers, improvised explosive devices, and the tunnel network to ambush Israeli soldiers. Narrow streets and densely populated neighborhoods made the fighting slow and deadly. Israeli troops had to clear building by building, often engaging in close-quarter combat. At the same time, Israeli special forces carried out covert operations to rescue hostages held in Hamas tunnels. These missions were extremely risky due to the complexity of the tunnel system and Hamas's defensive measures. While some hostages were freed in these operations or released during ceasefire agreements, many remained captive for months. The conflict's regional dimension also intensified. Hezbollah, the Lebanese militant group backed by Iran, launched rockets into northern Israel. Though the fighting there did not escalate into a full-scale war, the threat of a broader regional conflict loomed. Iran's support for Hamas and Hezbollah, including funding, weapons and training, was an underlying factor in the conflict's scope. Iran's role extended to cyber warfare, with Israel and Iran engaging in covert cyber attacks against each other's critical infrastructure. Iran targeted Israeli water systems and energy grids, while Israel struck Iranian nuclear facilities and military infrastructure. Attempts at ceasefires and peace talks were brokered by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States. A fragile ceasefire in late November 2023 allowed for some prisoner exchanges and humanitarian aid. However, this peace was short-lived, as sporadic violence resumed soon after. Throughout 2024 and into 2025, Israeli forces continued efforts to root out Hamas in southern Gaza. Cities like Khan Yunis and Rafah became battle zones with heavy fighting, destruction, and displacement. The blockade remained, and aid access was tightly controlled. The conflict deeply affected civilians on both sides. Israeli border communities lived under the constant threat of rocket fire, with many forced to evacuate or endure bomb shelters. Gazan civilians bore the brunt of the destruction and humanitarian crises. Psychological trauma, economic devastation, and loss of life created a deepening cycle of suffering. Politically, Israel faced criticism domestically and internationally over the conduct of the war, intelligence failures that allowed the initial Hamas attack, and the humanitarian impact of the campaign. Palestinian leadership was divided, with Hamas strengthening its hold in Gaza, even as the West Bank saw increased unrest. Internationally, the conflict strained Israel's relations with some Arab states, despite recent normalization agreements. Many countries condemned violence on both sides, but called for an end to hostilities and respect for human rights. As of May 2025, the conflict remains unresolved, with ceasefires fragile and violence flaring periodically. The deaths of key Hamas commanders such as Mohammed Deif on October 19, 2023, Khalil al-Hayya on November 5, 2023, Raid al-Attar on January 17, 2024, and Taysir al-Jabari on March 12, 2024, while significant, have not ended Hamas's capacity or willingness to fight. The Israel-Hamas war from October 2023 to May 2025 has been marked by intense military operations, tragic humanitarian consequences, complex hostage situations, and regional instability. It has underscored the enduring volatility of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the difficulties of achieving lasting peace in the region.